the monkeypox catastrophe is upon us. Now, I'm not making light of monkeypox. I'm making light of the fact that so many people who declare a thing a catastrophe will not tell people to stop engaging in the behavior that spreads the catastrophe. I'm never going to get over this. In the same way that I think that it broke the public health establishment in June of 2020, when after telling everybody on planet Earth they needed to stay home and restrict their children to quarters, never go to school, shut down your business, when the public health establishment then turned around and said, if you're twerking in the street for George Floyd, COVID will not get you and it'll be totally fine. Meanwhile, shut down the beaches in Jacksonville because Ron DeSantis is killing everybody. I think it completely undermined and destroyed the credibility of the United States public health establishment and the global public health establishment, by the way. Now, they're doing the same thing on monkeypox. So everybody in sort of the public health establishment is focused in on the fact that there is a dramatic lack of vaccine available for monkeypox. But here is the thing. It's actually not all that hard to avoid monkeypox. I, for example, am worried 0% about obtaining monkeypox. 0%. You know why? Because I'm not engaging in gay sex orgies. That is the reason. I would imagine there are many gay men who are not engaging in gay sex orgies, who also are not particularly worried about obtaining monkeypox, because it doesn't just descend on you like the plague. It is behaviorally driven. Pretending that this is not behaviorally driven is very, very silly when 96% of all cases of monkeypox documented so far are coming from close skin-to-skin and or sexual contact between gay men at sex parties. Like, this is not a difficult one. And yet we're supposed to declare this a public health emergency as though the sun shines equally on all. No, it absolutely does not. Monkeypox does not fall equally on all. But there are certain behaviors that the left has declared absolutely sacrosanct, which apparently include things like gay sex orgies. And then there are certain behaviors that the left says are sort of dispensable, like sending your kid to school or opening your business in the morning. Those things are just choices that we make as a society. And after all, why not structure the entire economy around the idea that you don't have to go to school or you don't have to go to work? Why not spend trillions of dollars to back that play? To fundamentally change all human behavior. But there's one behavior that must never be changed, and that is the desire of gay men to have sex with lots of other men. Like, first of all, I think it's a really derogatory sense of what it means to be gay. I know a lot of gay guys who are monogamous. I know a lot of gay guys who are not engaged in this sort of behavior. But the fact that Gavin Newsom is declaring a state of emergency over monkeypox, which presumably now that we're declaring a state of emergency over monkeypox, this means that Gavin Newsom will be found at a gay sex orgy at the French Laundry inside of the next 5 minutes, because that's apparently how declarations of public health emergencies in California work. Gavin Newsom, according to Breitbart, has declared a state of emergency in response to the monkeypox virus. In a statement on Monday, Newsom said the state of California will be working closely with the federal government to make monkeypox vaccines more readily available while combating any stigma the LGBTQ community might face. Okay, this talk about the stigma is like the hurt feelings is the main problem with monkeypox. I'm pretty sure it's the monkeypox. I think that's probably the biggest issue, is not the stigma. It would be the pox. The stigma. Oh my God, we can't say don't have sex with 100 men at a discotheque in San Francisco. We can't say that. I mean, that would spread a stigma, and that's the real problem. No, pretty sure it's the pox. Newsom said we'll work with the federal government to secure more vaccines, raise awareness about reducing risk, and stand with the LGBTQ community fighting stigmatization. According to the AP, roughly 800 cases have been reported in the Golden State, spreading mostly through skin-to-skin contact among men who have sex with men. The virus can also spread through the sharing of bedding, towels, and clothing. The CDC noted the virus can spread on surfaces used by individuals with monkeypox. So apparently there are some idiots on Twitter who are now like, maybe we should wash all of our account. We're going to go back to the days of COVID where you had to wash your vegetables from the grocery store. Monkeypox, according to the CDC, spreads in a few ways. It can spread to anyone through close personal, often skin-to-skin contact, including direct contact with monkeypox rash, scabs, or bodily fluids from a person with monkeypox, touching objects, fabrics, and surfaces that have been used by someone with monkeypox, contact with respiratory secretions. This direct contact can happen during intimate contact, including, and then it gets kind of graphic. That's, we're just going to skip that part of the CDC description, which involves the touching of, this is a direct quote, touching the genitals or butthole of a person with monkeypox. I'm not kidding. That's what the CDC actually says. Michelle Gibbons, executive director of the County Health Executives Association of California, said stigma toward individuals infected with monkeypox will only hurt the public health response, emphasizing anyone can be infected with the virus. That's not true. Anyone cannot be infected with the virus. You walking around right now at the grocery store, listening to this podcast on your earbuds, as you wheel around your 2 small children in your shopping cart, you're not getting monkeypox. I'm telling you right now, you'll be fine. But she said in a statement, public health officials are clear. Stigma is unacceptable and counterproductive in public health response. The fact is that monkeypox is primarily spread by skin-to-skin contact and sharing objects like bedding or towels without regard to sexual orientation or gender identity. Oh, weird. Weird then that it's afflicting nearly only gay men. Strange. Apparently the monkeypox has not been told about the stigma. Somebody should tell the monkeypox about the stigma so they can remove the stigma. When public health officials are mostly worried about stigma, they're not doing their jobs. By the way, where was all this worry about stigma when it came to COVID? For literally 2 years, the idea was that if you got COVID, you had committed some sort of moral crime because obviously you had not taken the precautions, right? You didn't wear the mask. You didn't say your prayer to St. Fauci 3 times a day. You didn't light the votive candle, did you? And that's why you got COVID. That's why you're bad, right? You getting COVID was a sign that you were insufficiently loyal to the diktats of the public health establishment. And therefore, we could say with complete confidence that you're a bad person. Getting COVID meant you were a bad person. And this is why you saw people on the left, when they would get COVID, they'd be like, what did I do, God, to deserve this? And it's like, you didn't do anything like the rest of the people who got COVID. But there was a moral component to getting COVID. But apparently there is no moral component whatsoever to getting monkeypox, which is strange, to say the least. And once again underscores the moral perspective of the left, in which sexual behavior is the only behavior that is both unstoppable and morally good. That is the only behavior that we say cannot be restricted in any way, which again goes to the identity issue. So for the left, the reason that they say that this is stigmatizing, because it's not stigmatizing, it's stigmatizing of behavior. Okay, gay sex orgies are a behavior that people engage in. That is not even a statement about gay men. That is a statement about sex orgies. The stigma idea, though, is that the only thing you are at root, it goes to a deeper point with regard to how the left views human beings. At root, the left believes that you are a series of sexual impulses, and this is what makes you who you are. It's a very Freudian perspective. Your identity, your core identity, is what you do in bed and who you wish to have sex with. All the other aspects of your identity are completely secondary. And all of society must be structured so as to please your identity, your subjective sense of identity. That is what society is all about. What society is all about is you finding the best version of you, free of all sorts of restrictions. And the only way we can know if you're fully authentic is if we get rid of those restrictions, if we get rid of objective reality. And it's the job of society to make every individual feel good. That's what society is really all about. And if that means that we have to structure all of our material systems in order to promote your sense of self-worth, we will do it. And if it means that we as a public health establishment are going to completely ignore the single most obvious public health measure that you could take to stop the spread of monkeypox, namely shut down the sex orgies, we are not going to do that because that might impinge on your sense of self. And the most important thing about you is your sense of sexual desire. And so we will pretend that this can equally afflict everyone, even though it obviously cannot equally afflict everybody. Meanwhile, all other areas of life, those are things that can be restricted. Those sexual behaviors are the things we absolutely cannot prevent. We cannot prohibit them. And again, this goes back to that sexual sense of identity. And what that means, this also runs counter to pretty much all traditional morality in another way, which is that traditional morality says that we all have all sorts of drives, right? Many of those drives are good, many of those drives are bad. But what traditional morality says is that your job as a human being is to curb the drives that are most damaging to both you and society in order to live a more flourishing life. Okay, what the left says instead is that your identity is the actions. So if we say to you as a gay man that you shouldn't engage in orgies, we have now crimped your identity. We're not saying you're not gay. You're still gay. We're just saying that you shouldn't engage in an orgy. No, that's not enough. Because what you are is a gay man who wishes to participate in orgies. And so if we say, don't engage in the orgy, that crimping of your style is an element of cracking down on your identity. This has long been part and parcel of the sexual revolution, which is that sexual activity is actually an identity, as opposed to, say, race, which is an immutable characteristic, right, that everybody can objectively verify from the outside. Race is not, in fact, like sexual orientation in any measurable way. It's just not the same thing. It's not the same thing because, again, your race is visible on you. It's not something you can change. It is, as the Supreme Court says, it's an immutable characteristic. Obviously, when it comes to sexual activity, the activities in which you engage, those are mutable. Forget about your inner feelings. Your inner feelings may be mutable, they may not be mutable, but your activities are certainly like the precursor to all human behavior and society is that behaviors can be changed and shaped. But we have decided that can no longer happen. Once action becomes identity, then that means that any attempt to restrict action is an attack on you. Now, that generalized argument breaks down society. Because forget about sex. If you attribute that sort of logic to any sort of action, My identity is as a shoplifter, and I wish to shoplift. And if you crimp my action in shoplifting, well, that's an attack on my, you can see how this logic just does not hold. And that's not to obviously equate sexual orientation with kleptomania. But the idea here is that the logical argument that is being made by the left here as a general rule on what is allowed, what society is allowed to say, what society is not allowed to say, undermines the fundamental basis of all societies, which is that there are certain behaviors that are bad and certain behaviors that are good. We try to incentivize the good behaviors and disincentivize the bad behaviors. The left fundamentally disagrees with that. They think the goal of society is to make you feel good in your internal being, and society is supposed to reshape itself to make you feel good in your internal being. Well, that's dangerous to society. It is, as we would say, antisocial. And yet that is precisely what is now being promoted. And monkeypox is just a sort of good example of how this happens. Who's got two thumbs and wants you to like and subscribe?